There was a time when nothing stood between you and the horizon. No fences, no boundaries, just grass, sky, and cattle that moved like weather across the plains. And then, a simple strand of wire changed everything. Not a railroad, not a war, not even a law. Just steel, twisted tight with a few sharp barbs. And in a matter of years, the open range was gone. Howdy, Chip Schweiger here. Welcome to another edition of Way Out West, the podcast that takes you on a journey through the stories of the American West, brings you the very best cowboy wisdom, and celebrates the legacy of the American cowboy. Imagine a time when a man could ride for miles. No fences, no boundaries, no gates to open or wire to mend. Just grass, sky, and cattle stretching to the horizon. That was the open range. And then, almost overnight, it wasn't. So this week on the show, we're talking about the moment the open range came to an end, and the simple invention that made it all happen. Barbed wire didn't just fence in cattle. It reshaped the West, changed the cowboy's life, and closed the chapter that had defined the frontier. After the episode, check out the show notes at wayoutwestpod.com/barbed wire. Welcome back. Before barbed wire, the West ran on movement. Cattle drifted with the seasons, cowboys followed. Spring meant branding, summer meant grazing, fall meant the long push north. The trail drives, Texas to Kansas, hooves like thunder. Ownership wasn't about fences, it was about brands and reputation. You didn't fence your cattle, you knew them. But there was a problem. The plains had grass, but not wood. No timber for fences, no stone for walls, and cattle, they didn't respect property lines. Farmers moved in, planted crops, and overnight those crops became dinner for a wandering herd. Conflict was inevitable. Farmers wanted protection, ranchers wanted freedom, but the land couldn't support both, not the way things were. Then came a simple invention. Steel wire, twisted tight, with sharp barbs every few inches. Barbed wire. Cheap, easy to install, deadly effective. Patented in the 1870s, mass-produced soon after. It did something no one else had been able to do before. It controlled the plains. At first, people didn't trust it. Would it hold cattle? Would it injure them? Then came the demonstrations. Longhorns charged the fence and stopped. Just like that, the future snapped into place. Sales exploded, and the prairie began to change. Wire went up mile by mile, across Texas, across Oklahoma, across the Great Plains. Land that had been open to all was suddenly divided. Water sources cut off, trails blocked, migration routes gone. The open range didn't disappear in a day, but it didn't take long. Within a couple of decades, it was over. Historians would later say barbed wire didn't just fence land, it fenced in an entire way of life. But not everyone accepted it. Men rode at night with wire cutters in hand. They cut fences, burned posts, opened the land back up, at least for a moment. These were the fence cutters. And what followed? Range wars. Arguments turned to gunfights. Property disputes turned deadly. Texas had to step in, and fence cutting became a felony. And just like that, the law took the side of the fence. But wire alone didn't end the open range. Nature helped. The winters of the 1880s, brutal. Blizzards swept the plains. Cattle trapped behind fences couldn't move to better grass. They piled up against the wire and died. Some ranchers lost half their herds. Some lost nearly all. That winter made one thing clear. The old way wasn't just fading, it was finished. With fences everywhere, the great cattle drives, they began to disappear. No more long pushes north, no more open corridors. Railroads came closer. Ranches became self-contained. The cowboy's job changed too. Less riding, more managing. Less freedom, more responsibility. The romantic cowboy riding the wide open prairie was replaced by something quieter, more practical. Now it was fix the fence, check the water, rotate the herd. Same grit, different work. The adventure gave way to routine, but the spirit, that didn't change. Barbed wire didn't just end something, it built something new. Ranching became more controlled, more efficient. Selective breeding improved herds. Pasture management took hold. What had been free-range grazing became modern ranching. And in a way, barbed wire didn't kill the cattle industry, it just reshaped it. But there was a cost. Bison lost their migration routes, driven closer to extinction. Native American life, already under pressure, was further disrupted. They had a name for the barbed wire. They called it the Devil's Rope, because it didn't just fence cattle, it fenced people out. And here's the thing about barbed wire. It was simple, just wire and barbs. But its impact, massive. It changed land ownership, economics, culture, freedom itself. It's a reminder technology doesn't ask permission. It just arrives and everything adjusts around it. Think about it. Barbed wire was the smartphone of the 1800s, a tool that seemed small but rewrote how people lived, how they worked, how they moved, how they connected. And just like today, some people adapted, some resisted, but nobody stayed the same. Next time you're driving a country road and you see that line of rusted wire stretching into the distance, take a second, because you're not just looking at fence, you're looking at that moment the prairie closed. And maybe that's the part we don't talk about enough. We like to remember the open range as freedom, and it was. But it was also uncertainty, risk, exposure to the elements, and to other men. Barbed wire brought limits, but it also brought order. It forced a different kind of thinking, a different kind of discipline. Not just riding harder, but managing better. Not just claiming land, but taking responsibility for it. Because when you put up a fence, you're saying something. You're saying, this is mine, I'll take care of it, and I'll be accountable for what happens here. And that idea, that shift from open access to stewardship, well, that's still with us today. Out here in the modern West, the fences are still standing, but they're not just barriers, they're lines of responsibility. They mark where a man or a family has chosen to invest their time, their labor, and their future. And maybe that's the real story of barbed wire. Not just that it closed the prairie, but that it helped define what came next. Ranching didn't disappear, it matured. It became more intentional, more sustainable, more rooted. So yeah, the open range is gone, but something else took its place. Something built to last. And if you look close enough, you can still see both worlds out there. In the stretch of a fence line disappearing into the distance, and in the cowboy riding it. Okay, before we close out this week, we've got just one more thing. Yep, that distinctive call from Buster the Bull means it's time for our Cowboy Glossary term of the week. And this week's term is roundup. So a roundup is the seasonal gathering of cattle spread across the open range, brought together by cowboys for branding, sorting, doctoring, and counting the herd. In the days of the open range, cattle from multiple outfits grazed together, so roundups were essential. Crews rode out, sometimes for weeks, locating, driving, and separating cattle by brand. It was hard work, long days in the saddle, dust, weather, and miles of country to cover. But it was also where the work of ranching came together, and where a cowboy proved his worth. Well, that's about all for this episode of Way Out West. I appreciate you spending part of your day with me. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. And maybe drop us a review, which will really help us reach more fans of the American West. Next week on Way Out West, we're going to step back even further into the true origins of the cowboy and the Spanish and indigenous traditions that shaped everything from gear to the language to the way a man rides. Until next time, this is Chip Schweiger, reminding you to keep your cinch tight, your loops handy, and your eyes on the horizon. We'll see you down the road.